So by popular demand, I'm going to talk a bit about, well, talk about the trip to Thailand, but talk about the Dhamma um, that we all experienced in our travels. And I thought today we would focus on Longpa Ganha and what he taught. And over the weeks, we'll talk more about different teachers that we saw and different Dhamma messages. And um, I'm looking forward to the folks who were on the pilgrimage to share to what they heard and what mattered, what really stood out to you. And I thought I would just share some of the things that struck me, that some of the things that Longpa said many times as we were staying there for the week. Were things that he had talked about before when we visited. I'd been there 3 times before. Ayya Santussika had been there twice before. We stayed for about a month in 2019, and we of course had intended to go every year, but the pandemic kind of got in the way, as it did for so many plans that so many people had. But this time, a few different things coming through. You really get a sense that he also is constantly learning about things in the world. I feel pretty confident that in terms of the Dhamma, he's already walked the entire path. And from that place, he emphasizes different things than we might hear in other places. He really feels like people are putting so much emphasis on formal meditation practice that there's a neglect of the other aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path. So he frequently talks about that and how important it is to practice the moral virtue, which this group, I know everybody knows that. I know that there is a lot of attention that we pay to precepts, and the foundation of virtue in that provides the basis that's necessary for awakening. You can't do it without that. And as one awakens more, we might say, we see more and more the importance of the sila, of the moral virtue, and how the desire to not harm anyone gets so strong and clear. And so it's good to take in the message, though, that that Ajahn Gunha has around this, I think, because there is a lot of focus on formal meditation, and he's certainly not suggesting that we don't do formal meditation. And he says for monastics, 2 hours is enough. I think he actually says kind of the same thing for lay people. Mm-hmm. 2 hours of sitting and walking meditation in a day is quite wonderful. Definitely gives us a basis of calm and stability of mind, and that's the point. But then he talks about having a sort of constant level of samadhi as we're just going through the day. He talks about mindfulness, samadhi, and wisdom present all the time. And he actually, when he at one point, he invited the nuns to come, the bhikkhunis to come upstairs and have a session with him. And he talked about how he himself has this kind of samadhi all the time. That's kind of that momentary samadhi that you might see, the way that's described in the commentaries. And it's a level of calm in the mind. And so I think that's an interesting area to explore for all of us. What is the level of calm or stability of the mind in any particular moment, regardless of what I'm doing. And he emphasizes very strongly how important it is to be happy all the time. Now that sounds like an impossibility. How can I be happy when, people are shooting each other in Gaza, and how can I be happy when, people are doing mean things, or, maybe how can I be happy when my mind is full of aversion over something, whether it's something I feel justified to be averse towards or not. But what Ajahn Gunha is saying is, he really said this many times, people will remember, I'm sure, don't follow your thoughts and emotions. Don't follow your feelings. Follow the Dhamma. And when you breathe in happily. And when you breathe out happily, and do your work happily. Be happy when you do your work. And that when you do your work happily and you're selfless, because when the self is involved, you've got suffering. When we're in a mental state of letting go of the self, of the ego, then the suffering ends, the stress ends, and we're able to give what's hard to give. The word he uses is siesala. It's about giving what's hard to give. It's about self-sacrifice, although sacrifice is a hard word for us. It may not be quite what's meant, but I think we know, if, I know Ajahn Chah used the example of, let's say you have 2 apples and you really want to eat them, but you decide to give one to a friend, and one's big and one's small, and you want to give the small one away and eat the big one, but what you make yourself do is give the big one away and eat the small one. And that's this is a very simple example of giving what's hard to give. We may feel like we want something for ourselves, but that never works out. It never works out in the end to take that for ourselves. What really enriches us is that extra giving to someone else. And so this is what Ajahn Gunha really constantly emphasizes, and how we want to erode that reliance upon and constant propping up of the self, of the ego. He said that when you really get that there's no self in anything, there's nothing that's me or mine. He said when we really have that, then we can walk around with a level of samadhi that's the next level, the one that accesses wisdom, that accesses awakening. And it's interesting to really kind of, I want to say, play with that, to really notice when the mind is in that state, and when it's not in that state, what do? We don't follow the thoughts and emotions. Instead, we come back to compassion for ourselves, compassion for others. Like if we're upset with someone for the way they're behaving, then we can come back to compassion around why they might do those things that are really causing suffering for themselves and others. And we can do the same for ourselves, and learn how to redirect our own mind to Dhamma. So he didn't say it in that way, but he would say, you have to have right view, right understanding, and right practice. Right practice includes the whole of the Noble Eightfold Path, and being happy, understanding when we're not happy, we come back to the Dhamma and the happiness in the Dhamma. So it's like this, simple, in a way, teaching, beautiful and hard to do, because it is in conflict with so many of our habits, so much of our conditioning. And, he talked about, when he would talk about people being overly focused on sitting meditation, he said then, people can be doing sitting meditation, but then when they get up, they're arguing with their family, with their friends, with their partner. And if that's what's happening, then we have to really look at that. What is my mind doing when I'm not in meditation? And also, I've seen it many times where we can take what's happening with our mind in meditation as a possession of the ego. It's like, I'm getting somewhere. I'm, like, this is me and my practice. Whether we think it's awful or we think it's great, we're still identifying with it. Instead of recognizing that this is a process of learning and a process of development. It's not something we own, and it's not like we can, puff up the ego with it or pull it down. It's not about that. So really looking at, if I'm, arguing with other people, I've got a lot of aversion or whatever. If there's, another time he said they're sitting in meditation, but as soon as they get up, they're on their phone. And he talked about technology quite a lot because he sees us as Westerners. So we're there. 26 people makes kind of an impression wherever we went, it's a big group and they can't really quite ignore us, and they don't want to ignore us. They want to understand, what are these people about? And I was so moved, touched by the quality of our people. We got really serious practitioners who are practicing and well restrained and pitching in and helping at the monastery, and people at the monastery, especially at Ajahn Gunha's, where we spend a whole week. It's different when you just kind of drop in for a few hours like we did at other places during the second week. But, for the lay people in the monastery, for the people who live there, they really said very beautiful things about our group because people were so diligent and kind and really earnest in practice, the practice of, like how you sweep and how you cut the vegetables. And, like it's more than just a task. So really, really taking in the teachings and using them. And of course, not just the ones they were hearing at the time, but all of the practice that had led up to this point in their life. And so it was interesting. And I don't know how much Lopa Gunha changed what he says because he was talking to us, but he frequently brought up science and technology and how in the West that's very advanced. And yet, the wisdom of Dhamma is not so advanced. And we need to look at how we use technology. He told us this before in 2019 also, that we shouldn't use our phones for anything but Dhamma. And he was also very impressed that people on the trip came from so many different places, from India, from the UK, from Mexico, from, and the US, different places in the US. And, he's like, yeah, this is, realizing this is because we're on Zoom, because we've got, this opportunity now to be talking to people anywhere. And what a beautiful thing it is to be able to have that connection and to be able to share something as precious as Dhamma. And that, we can also, as we all are well aware, share a lot of garbage online and get involved in all kinds of things that are more than distracting, actually training the mind in the wrong way. So he warned us about, being conscientious about that. And he talked about garbage. Actually, the translator used the word rubbish. I'm sure training was more, maybe a little more towards the British side. And he said when people fight, they fight over rubbish. That all of the things that one thinks they're going to gain, if it's material. Now, of course, things are more complicated than that. People have to have the basic requisites to live. And, to be able to be in a socio-political situation where your fundamental needs are met and people have a certain amount of ability to be free to live a happy life. Of course, we all know about the complexities of all that, because most of the time what we think is a happy life doesn't really lead to happiness, does it? For that, we have to find the Dhamma. So the idea of being able to practice a religion of our choice is very important. And Ajahn Gunha would say that, they're all the same. Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, they all have the same aim. He said if people are fighting, that's not the religion. The religion, he said, religion is Dhamma. And it's about being selfless and loving, giving. Really, he said, the Buddha loves you the most, Jesus loves you the most. It's like that message that really is in accordance with Dhamma, the selflessness and the wisdom, the kindness. It's universal, and when it goes off that track, it's not religion anymore. He said you have to understand the true religion. It's not about Buddhism, it's not about any of the others. It's about what is really ennobling and supports us in our development of kindness and wisdom. So I'm sure there are things that the pilgrims might be thinking of that I missed there, or things that you would feel it would be worth putting a more of an emphasis on from Ajahn Gunha, or the experience being there, and maybe the things that really felt like they hit home for you. And I'd be happy to hear what any of you want to share about that. And anybody else, any questions you might have about things I just said, or what else we might have experienced. Did you want to say something, Grace?
Sure. I wasn't sure if someone said my name, but you just did. I think one thing that was really beautiful for me to hear was when Ajahn Gunha said that there's like two kinds of happiness, which he defined really clearly for us. I don't know what word he would use if he spoke English fluently, but there's conventional happiness, which he said is just another mental formation. Happy or unhappy, just a mental formation. Yes. And then there's, again, I don't know what he would say, but I've been thinking of it as Dhamma happiness. And that's when we are embodying that sense of not having a sense of self.
Yes, yes, beautiful. Yeah, go ahead, Saket.
Okay. I just wanted to share, Aya. I think the thought of
First of all, can you hear Saket? Yes.
great.
Okay, they can hear you.
Hear him. I can't see him.
No,
that's fine.
he's over there.
And I'm fine not being seen.
I'm seeing you, Sakit.
Yeah, thank you. So I really liked one teaching of I think the sense of giving, by the way, was really strong that I observed in the monastery, in Ajahn Ganha's monastery. And over there, I felt, I think this was the first time that I went to, maybe KBV is one exception, though I would say, where there was just so much of love and giving. And for example, when we go to Ajahn Ganha's kuti, more than us taking gifts over there, it was as if we were getting gifts from them every day that we went. And it might just have been really small gifts, but they were all so meaningful and sweet still, you know. So, for example, Ajahn Ganha said, well, if you all are keeping the 8 precepts, you may I think the sense so that you may not be comfortable or it may be difficult. So come every evening to the kuti and have some refreshments, which are allowable refreshments. And then he even asked us what time we would like to come to the kuti. And similarly, then he said, I don't think one packet of yogurt drink is sufficient for the Westerners. Every day they should be given 4 packets of. And by the end of it, we had so many, and there were vegans amongst us, and they didn't know what to do with these yogurt packets, and we were just overwhelmed by the amount of love and giving that we experienced. And there were candies coming, and not only from Ajahn Ganha, but I felt even from the people in the monastery. Like I remember once I was standing in line to wash my dish after the meal, and one of the people from the kitchen came up and said, I'll wash it for you. And I said, no, I'll wash it. And they insisted that they will wash my dish. And I was like, what did I just see and what was this? 'Cause I didn't even know the person. Similarly, we had this interesting experience of coffee enemas over there.
If you haven't heard of the coffee enema yet,
that's a separate segue. But the people were coming and giving us coffee enemas and so selflessly. But the point, without getting into a side alley that I wanted to share, was I thought the message that I could see was that giving is a way of maybe being selfless, of reducing our sense of self. And while meditation and samadhi are part of the Noble Eightfold Path, and like you shared, but rest of the day is also a practice. And whatever we do, if we go to work or if we're going to school or whatever we are doing, if we do it as a gift, I thought that was a very life-changing message for me from the Vatsaptavi, Ajahn Ganha's monastery. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Saket. Yeah, I think you really get the feeling. Yeah, it was beautiful. Holly.
Trying to think of a few things I wanted to mention, which because there was so much that was wonderful out of Ajahn Gunha's. Sakit, your mention of the of the gift giving, that always comes up for me. And yes, every time we went for morning 7 o'clock giving and Dhamma talk, there would be these little baggies of these really sweet yogurt drinks and candies and sweet pastries. And I think most of it looked at it and went, ugh. And yet it was, because that's not what we were wanting to eat. And so we're going like, we're putting them under our chair and we're putting them in our bags and we're carrying them back to our cooties. And then there's this mass of yogurt containers and goodies. But it was just so clear to us that that abundant attitude toward giving was the teaching. And it went for, and I observed over the days, because we lived as a resident, 8 precept resident would live. And we went at dawn to give on Pindabat, to give food for the monks when they came by on the road out toward the village. And I just had this sense so clearly that I had bought goods from the ladies on the left side of the road and men who were selling rice and entrees and packaged goods, and I'd buy that, and then we'd all walk over to the other side of the road where there'd be a row of tables lined up, and we'd put our offering on the table and we'd wait for the monks to come by, and the monks would come by and chant a blessing, and then the rest of about 50 monks would come by and we'd give them spoons of rice from our bowl, and the handlers would take our entrees and put them on a little truck, and that would all go back to the monastery. And then we go back to the monastery and we sit and have a meditation for an hour and do chores. And coffee. I can't quite remember the order. And then we'd all line up along these long stainless steel tables in the kitchen full of food, the food we had that some of us had donated. And the monks would go first, and then the Michi, and then the 8 precepts, which would be us, and many other people there who were residents, who were 8 precept, and then kind of back down the line. It was just so circular, and kind of the synergy of a giving attitude was really part of the experience for me. And I think we eventually, the van drivers took our boxes of sweet yogurt drink to, what did they take it to?
An orphanage.
An orphanage, yeah. We thought about what we wanted to do with it. We wanted to give it away where it was a good place to give it away and where it would be used, because it is calorie food. So that was when Van helped. The van drivers actually did that at the end for us, which was really nice. And then the other story I wanted to share was the way that Lungpo Gunha acknowledged the bhikkhunis and called them out as far as like coming forward to be the one to touch the offerings for the water pouring into the bowl ceremony, and other times when to teach to them. He had seated us in the center of 3 groups of chairs and taught often to us or to the bhikkhunis. And then about the 4th day, I was shelling peanuts and doing food prep. I guess I was eating that, and I sat down with some Thai ladies who were there for a while, and one of them spoke some English, and she asked, "Why are you here? And who are you with?" And so I told them, and she said, "Oh, look at my arm." She said, "I have goosebumps," and she did, and all the hairs in her arm were standing up. She said, "Oh, it's so wonderful you're here with the bhikkhunis." And we had several occasions at other places. Oh, we were having lunch at a food court in a big store on the 2nd week, and we kind of broke out and went to different parts of the food service area and came back with what we wanted and sat down and ate. And about halfway through that, this guy comes up with this huge bag of salad and salad fixings in a nice plastic container and walks over to the bhikkhunis. He'd seen him come in the door, and he went and bought this food, and he offered this food to the bhikkhunis, and they took it and gave him some praise chanting and gratitude chanting. And so it was I did not see another brown-robed bhikkhuni on the entire time in Thailand, but our group. And I think it was acknowledged very nicely in the places that we went that the bhikkhunis that we were with were fully ordained, excellent leaders and practitioners, and some of them told them so, and that they wanted to give. So those are my tales.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. You know, like, yeah, kind of just an example from Ajahn Gunha. Some of you know this already because we've talked about this before a little bit. The order of how when people take food is always based on their seniority, and traditionally the monks, the men always go before the women in Asia. And so the bhikkhunis usually would go behind even the novice monks, and then various monasteries started to change that, and now then the bhikkhunis would go behind the bhikkhus. And at Ajahn Gunha's monastery, that's the way they were doing it back some years ago, and some of the lay people felt that was wrong, and the bhikkhunis should go behind the novice monks. And Ajahn Gunha said, oh, well, if you don't like that the bhikkhunis are going behind the bhikkhus and before the novice monks, then I think that they should go before the bhikkhus because they've got more precepts than the bhikkhus have. And so actually Holly's list of how people go in the food line didn't include the bhikkhunis because
I missed it because I never got to see you go through.
you never got to see us take our food,
Yeah.
because it would happen while you were still in the Dhamma hall in meditation and chanting or Dhamma talk.
No, it was after at the talk. They stayed at the talk.
That was toward the end of the 7 o'clock.
Oh, that's true. It was still part of the 7 o'clock
We
meeting.
went and got alms
Ajahn
round, and
Gunha's
then we went to the
Kuti.
talk, and
That's right. I'm sorry.
you ladies, bhikkhunis, left early.
Yep, that's right. We left early because Longpa Ganha said, okay, then the bhikkhunis go first. They'll get the food before anyone else. And so this is Ajahn Gunha's way, you know, he's not gonna like back down because people are, you know, we're all still dealing with our conditioning, right? What we think is appropriate and inappropriate. And a lot of times that carries a lot of prejudice and maybe some things that aren't so nice. And we need to have the help in seeing it. Holly mentioned that they went after the novice monks. You mean the Meiji?
Mayor was asking.
Oh, yeah.
I left her in America. Well, in America.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you, Holly. Thank you for your sharing. James?
So, one of the things that really impressed me was, again, at Ajahn Gunha's. We spent a week there, and as everybody's indicated, we were profoundly warmly received. And as the week went on, you know, we kind of were received more and more warmly. But actually, what I wanted to say, what impressed me was that there wasn't a lot of meditation. In fact, from the perspective of, you know, historically from a retreat, there was very little meditation. You know, there'd be an hour or 45 minutes in the morning and perhaps the same in the evening. And personally, you know, my meditation experiences, I did not perceive them as being, you know, profoundly powerful or insight generating, etc. You know, it was lots of wandering mind. Notwithstanding, you know, when I left the monastery a week later, I was absolutely fused and saturated with samadhi. And my heart was, absolutely open to all that was arising, and very powerful metta and equanimity. And so that really impressed me, because there was something about the whole chemistry of that community and everything that happened while we were there outside the context of, formal meditation that was profoundly influential and developmental for me. And I believe that, a similar experience, I believe everybody had that experience to some extent. And because there was such a profound rising of care, giving, and gift giving, but love and care and metta, compassion in the group for each other. That well, to me, that was the most profound Sangha experience I've ever had. And I can the bond I feel with everybody who traveled with us is deep and profound and very respectful and appreciative. I think Saget had spoken wisely about the effect of gift giving and its role in our daily lives, and I was really taken with the desire to return to my practice here and get up in the morning and figure out ways to be kind and generous to others. So and I've come back with a really strengthened resolve to improve the quality and the determination of my practice that is I may have experienced on retreat before, but always kind of fell apart when faced with the conditions that I returned to. But so far so good. And I feel challenged, and there's a lot of wisdom arising in terms of this isn't wholesome, and how to improve my practice. And I'm very grateful for everything, and I'm very grateful for everybody.
Thank you, James. Lovely. Carol.
Okay, first, I had a couple of things I wanted to mention, but first of all, I had a question for you. I had noticed sitting next to the nuns up front, there was another nun wearing white and orange. What type of nun was she? Do you know?
She's probably the Korean nun.
Was she Korean nun? Okay.
Sikamana, which means she's not a bhikkhuni, or bhikshuni would be the way they would say it from the Sanskrit tradition. Yes, but she's similar to a novice nun.
Okay, I just never had seen that type of garment before, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
okay,
Korean.
but that was my question. But one thing that really struck me was the welcoming, I guess unconditional acceptance is what really struck me. Because I come from a background, and especially where I work, where people talk about each other all the time, and it's usually not in a good way. So I'm used to being thought, or being treated as less than and thought of as less than. But over there, while working alongside of the people, preparing food or shelling peanuts, everybody was happy, everybody was equal, everybody was good, and there was never a mean word. And I felt it. And it just made a big impression on me that that everybody was welcome, and no meanness was there, and I loved it. And one thing I had noticed too was I think there's a chink in the armor about bikinis over there. I think we've made a chink. I think there is progress, and we've opened eyes, and I think it's good. And I recognize it. I really got to see the conditioning and how it's going to take time, but I do think the wheels are turning in that direction. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. I mean, we had amazing diversity in our little group. Somebody mentioned that we had people from every decade, from the 20s through the 70s. We had people from, as I mentioned, various places in the world, and we had people from various different kinds of backgrounds. And it was just, I mean, it's actually representative of KBV anyhow, because that's how KBV has always been. But it's just very wonderfully, what do I want to say, touching reality that we can like find in the heart, that commonality. What we all want is that caring, that love, that acceptance, that kindness, the acknowledgement that as human beings we all struggle, we all suffer, we're all learning, that it is possible to be happy moment by moment in our daily life, regardless of what's happening. And it is just very, very inspiring. It was inspiring to me to be on this journey with this group. Thank you. And Grace?
I guess I wanted to share some more from what I received from Ajahn. Was I got the chance to ask him the question, which he paraphrased as, how can we be happy when we still have a sense of self? Because I think going into this trip, and something I've been working on also in therapy, not just in Dhamma specific groups, but I really saw my difficult feelings and craving and suffering as an enemy. And I would, like, when I asked him this question, like, how can I be happy when I still have a sense of weeping? I was like so overcome with feeling, because I really just thought of it as this villain that I needed to get away from and like beat out of myself or something. But he answered over the course of several days, actually, and gave many, many layers to this. And to paraphrase, because there was so much, but I don't want to see my suffering as an enemy anymore. I don't want to see my sense of self as an enemy anymore. I'm doing the best I can to do that. But what's most helpful to me and to my practice is when I see my sense of self as a friend who is kindly pointing out the spinach in my teeth, and my suffering is there saying, hey, here's something you can work on. If you're feeling kind of bad today, here's something you can sit with. And if you really just sit with it and you work with the Four Noble Truths, like I'm gonna find something to take away from this, something to learn from and practice with. And yeah, to really see my sense of self as a friend walking with me on this path.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's so true. And you can really see why the Buddha, he pointed out the suffering that we experience as the notice, the impetus, the red flag that helps us to know that we need to take time, we need to turn towards it, we need to take care of it. If we can have that attitude of whatever it is we feel like our particular weaknesses or challenges or whatever, if we can see that as the opportunity. And I know that maybe, can sound too glib or whatever, but it's really true. He showed us how to be happy by being present with our own suffering, our own discomfort, our own sense of lack, our own ineffective coping mechanisms, and all of that, because it's through turning towards that we really can blossom and then accept others too. No one's our enemy. Yeah, Nita.
I also remembered that during our stay in the monastery, there was a death in the village, and the dead body was kept in the Dhamma hall for 3 days as per the Thai tradition. And usually I am quite scared of thinking about death or dead bodies, but every morning at 3 a.m. in the pitch dark, we'll go in the Dhamma hall, and I would feel that there is a body lying there, and I would sit and meditate and chant. And I think for the entire 7 days when we were staying in the monastery, fear was nowhere to be found. So maybe there were other feelings and defilements. But fear definitely was not there, even in the jungle. And that was a painful experience for me.
Yes.
Mini Tudong in flip-flops through the muddy, slippery, flooded out parts of trails. And Nita did it all in her flip-flops.
I was very I was comfortable. There were others. I think
Sarna had
had a tough time.
Yeah.
This experience memorable.
So to give some of you who weren't there a little more context, when we came to Ajahn Gunha's monastery, so our plan obviously was to stay there for 1 week. The whole trip was 2 weeks long, and the first week was at Ajahn Gunha's. And then the second week we visited 4 other master teachers. And that meant a lot of moving around, a lot of van rides. We stayed in hotels, which was a very different experience. Some of the group actually went to the night market once, and different things were going on. Another way to practice. But when we were at Ajahn Gunha's, one of the people on the trip said, are there going to be any cremations? Because it's a cremation site. And of course, that's a complete unknown. No dead bodies at the moment. But then I think our second day, a dead body arrived. And also maybe on the second day, Ajahn Gunha met with our group, and we had a short meeting, enough time for Grace to ask her question, which I'm really appreciating Grace's astuteness in recognizing and working with that same question, seeing how Ajahn Gunha actually came back to it many times and gave many layers. It's really pretty interesting. But then he said, okay, that's enough for today. We've got, to get to see each other's faces, to get to meet. Now you're going to go on a mini Tudong. And most of you in this tradition kind of know what Tudong is. It's when it's a Thai way of saying Tutanga is the austere practices, and the Tudong has been come to identify the walk when a monastic takes their bowl and their robes and just goes for a very long walk, and through the countryside, and getting food wherever people are willing to offer in the mornings, and sleeping in the rough and all of that. And so this was a mini Tudong. So Ajahn Gunha's monastery is on the edge of a huge national forest, and it's jungle. and it has wild elephants, and it has other wild bovine that are like not quite like water buffaloes and not quite like steers that we know, or but anyhow, they're these huge animals. And we saw elephants' footprints. They were kind of filled with water. It was extremely muddy because of the rains that had come recently, and it was a real slip sliding adventure, and it was long. And so some people, it was really interesting because Ajahn Gunha was in a pickup truck with a driver coming around to making sure we were okay and picking people up sometimes if they needed to get a ride back. And it was, and he referred to it with the nuns at least later, saying, it's like the mini tudong in life. When you're happy and you're doing things from a place of happiness, then even though things are difficult and there's suffering and there's challenges, we're happy to do it. We're willing to do it because we're infused with that happiness. And so it was kind of interesting. We just seemed to be exposed to a lot of different aspects of the practice. So we were there for the funeral. We were there for the cremation. The cremation site had changed a lot since we had seen it before. Before it was just a rectangle of bricks that they would put the body in on like there'd be a grate with the fire below it. But now it was a building where you just like put the coffin in there, and then some people were there when they opened the door again and took out the ashes and the bits of bone or whatever that was left. And it's also like what we're doing with our mind, like Nita was saying, remembering, okay, there's this lady's body here who passed away. We'll all be like that at some point. Anybody have any questions or comments? Sweeping the body is just like sweeping the leaves. Oh, yeah.
Thank you for everyone for their sharings about the trip away. Feel kind of, well, jealous wouldn't be the right word, would it? But it must be quite an experience.
Well, there's next time.
I'm curious to get a sense of what the monastery was like, because I've read a little bit about them, and well, evidently it is in the forest. Was it very big? Were there lots of monks there? What was it like staying there? What was the accommodation like, and what was the daily routine? I've heard that some of the monasteries, they get up really, really, really early. So what was the average sort of day like? Just
so
sense of what it was like,
yeah, it is in the forest, but Ajahn Gunha's monastery is built up quite a lot. It's huge. They have accommodations there for something like 2,000 people. Of course, they're talking about the way Thai people will come and sleep 9 people on one flat surface, in a room. But still, it's a lot of different buildings that are like houses, big houses. And we had people on there were 3 floors in the buildings that we occupied, and we would have our group would be on like floor 1 and floor 2, and maybe other people would be on the 3rd floor or something like that. Or, and we were in 3 buildings next to each other. And the buildings had individual rooms that had their own bathrooms. And there was also a few small rooms that people could stay in by themselves. So there were people sharing rooms where, like, these thin mattresses, but maybe because there weren't 9 people in there were 4 people. You could each have a couple of them on top of each other, on top of basically a marble shelf, basically, where that's where you would sleep. And then there was a bathroom, and there was also a patio spaces outside the rooms. So there was an area on the floor where the bhikkhunis stayed, and Holly was up there too, because she had one of the small kind of cubicle rooms, perfect for snorers, to be on their own. And we would meet. We had 2 other rooms. Ayya Chitananda and I shared a room with a bathroom, and Ayya Nyanaka had a different room with a bathroom. And then in front of that, there was quite a large open balcony patio like space where we would all come together, like at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and share what we were experiencing, have Q&A kind of thing, maybe a little Dhamma sharing, maybe some meditation. So the schedule was that the bell in the morning rang at 3 a.m. and you were expected to be in the Dhamma hall at 3:30 for meditation, chanting and meditation. And then after that was finished, we'd do chores. And a lot of the chores that there would be sweeping, there would be, people need to clean bathrooms and stuff like that. But they had just had their katina, which was huge. And they made up space for a couple thousand people, I think, to come to the katina. And so there were like 2,000 or 4,000 some bed sheets to fold. And so as they were getting washed, these big piles of sheets would come out into the kitchen area, and we'd all be standing around folding them. That would be our chore. And then at 7 o'clock, Lungpa was having people come to his kuti, the building he lives in, which is, his quarters are upstairs. Down below the kuti is where people would meet with him generally. And he would do some talking with people behind the backside of the kuti, where people were, having arrangements they needed to make of different kinds. And then he would come out to the front. And it's not really quite describable, but we would all be seated there, and he would talk about Dhamma and give blessings, that kind of thing. And as was mentioned, the bhikkhunis would leave early because we needed to, was that at 7 o'clock? And we had to collect our food about 7:45.
Yeah.
And so then the whole food thing would start happening. The lay people would go out, as was mentioned, to be on the street outside the monastery on the road to offer food into the bowls of the monks. I think there were like 50 monks present in the monastery at the time.
Yeah, a lot.
It's always a little uncertain after the vasa, especially after the katina. Then there's a lot of movement, monks coming and going, but I think there were around 50. There are a number of meichis, nuns, 8 or 10 precept nuns staying there, not in an official nuns compound or anything, but just as part of in the living quarters near the lay people. And there are quite a few regular lay people living in the monastery, staying there. And then I think the next official thing for the monastery is after you eat your meal at like, what, 9 o'clock
Yeah.
in the morning?
9:30.
That's your one meal for the day. And then at 3 o'clock, the bell at 3 in the afternoon, the bell would ring again. And that would be the chore period. And usually it's things like sweeping. There might be more sheets to fold, but you know, something like that, some kind of chore. And then our group would go for those nice drinks over at Lumpa's Kuti, and we were always hoping to get to see him, and it might happen or it might not. And then there would be evening chanting at 7, I believe, and Dhamma talk, right? And we had funeral chanting on those days that we had the body there.
I think it was earlier. Puja was like 6.
Was it
I
6?
think it was 6. Grace thinks it's 6 too.
Okay, 6
Okay.
o'clock.
Yeah, 6 or 6:15 if it's the funeral. They did it a little later.
Oh yeah, that's
Because
right.
then there was a talk afterwards. And
Yeah.
not meditation.
So that's kind of after the evening meditation, you are pretty ready to head to bed.
But the jet lag isn't bad that direction. Everybody got there, slept
Yeah.
a full night, got up at 3:30, no problem, or 3, whatever, no problem. And just you fall right into the routine when you get there. But coming back has been another story, I think, for most of us. This direction is harder for jet lag for some reason.
A lot of us came down with a cold after we left each other. I'm sure we picked it up right at the end of the trip. Yes, well, Ajahn Gunha did train. This is a question from Neil in the chat. Is this an Ajahn Chah monastery? No, it's not. It's actually a Dhamma Yut monastery. The pictures on the shrine are Ajahn Mun, Ajahn Chah, and Ajahn Mahabua. And Ajahn Gunha did live with Ajahn Chah. He's Ajahn Chah's nephew and trained there. And so a lot of the monks in our tradition, Ajahn Pasano, Ajahn Brahm, and others lived with him, have extremely high respect for him. He had deep insights at a very early age, in his 20s. He's been a monk for how long? He talked about it over 50 years, I think.
I think so, yeah.
And yeah, so it is a Dhamma Yut monastery, and he really does his own thing. He doesn't seem to be like, he's had nuns in his monastery wearing brown for decades. And then they would change into white if they had to go out of the monastery because of the non-acceptance of higher ordination for women. But he's been, and the monastery is vegetarian, which is also very rare in Thailand. He feels like, well, I've heard him say he feels like it's selfish. People are selfish to eat meat. And of course, we know that sometimes people need it. The body needs some kind of more complex protein, but to really, I think he would really say, really know why you're eating meat. There's this point where I think Ajahn Chah talked about this, where you see all beings as the same species. You recognize that there's really like these bodies, the elements come together to create these bodies, but this has nothing to do with the consciousness. And if you really start to see that there's no self in these bodies, and you start to really see it all the same, then you have that compassion for all living beings. You don't want any living being to suffer. You don't want to be the cause of the suffering of any living being. Holly?
One of the things that some of the people who didn't go, I'd like them to know, is that I went along and I didn't have to do any logistics at all. I just had to show up at the van when it was time again to show up at the van, or follow the monastery schedule. So Ayya Santussika and her family took care of the van and the lodgings the second week, and pre-visited all the monasteries to make sure it was fine for us to go and when we could have audience with the Ajahns. Ayya took care of, I'm sure, unbelievable amount of details while Ayya Santussika was off on retreat. Got there, I just went with the flow. And now here at home, I'm like, I have to drive and I have to cook and I have to make decisions about the day. It's really a gift to be able to go on that trip and just be with being a sponge in a really soft way to pick up all the Dhamma and all the cultural that we learned, from which we all expressed our gratitude to Ayya Chitnanda and Santussika extensively on the trip.
Yeah, thank you. It was kind of funny. I kept counting heads with it. Okay, do we have everybody? How many do we have here? And then I thought about my grandma. She had 5 kids, and she said whenever they went to the beach, she would sit on the beach counting 5 heads out there in the water, And we had a beach very close to one place where we stayed, and we walked there in the evening, and as the sun is going down, some of our very water loving members would dive in and swim, and I'm counting heads. It's like, are they all okay? Yeah, it was a delight though to be able to share this amazing treasure of these incredibly developed teachers in Thailand. And some people said, well, are there very incredibly developed teachers in other places? And I'm sure there are, but I don't know them. It's all really thanks to my son becoming a monk in Thailand that I know any of this. So it's quite the precious opportunity. Yeah. Yes, Neil.
First, what is the body of water in that last picture that Holly just shared?
It's the ocean.
Yeah, it's
So what is it? The
probably
Indian
the
Ocean?
Gulf of Thailand, I would
Oh,
imagine.
Yeah, Indian
okay.
Ocean.
Or is it
Nice.
the Indian Ocean?
Indian Ocean.
Gulf of Thailand.
Gulf of
Yeah.
Thailand. But what I wanted to say was, even before Holly and Grace started sharing pictures in the chat, which I hope we can somehow incorporate into the recording. I'm not sure how we would do that, but even before that, I'm really appreciative of all the sharing. It really created for me a real picture of, and I'm sure not everything that happened, at least in your first week, but because initially, when it was, oh, we're going to talk about our trip to Thailand, I was like, oh, I wasn't on the trip. I don't think I really want to hear about the trip to Thailand. I just want pure Dhamma from the Ayyas. But it was the whole session has been quite a Dhamma talk, and I thank you all. I have never thought I would want to go to Thailand. I just don't like heat. I don't like bugs. But now I'm actually thinking about the next time. So thank you all, really.
Yeah, great. I mean, it was very inspiring. You know, Elizabeth went again, and she's 78 years old, and she is such a trooper. And it's like you can get the feeling it's possible.
She did the whole mini Tudong.
She did the whole mini Tudong.
A lot of people got picked up in the pickup truck, but not Elizabeth.
And she was right at front in the front.
She kept going. Yeah, she was like,
but we had the whole range of people. I mean, we've got one person who has plantar fasciitis, very painful foot issues, and they also did a large part of the Tudong. And you know, it's possible. And some of you who went, I had to twist your arm a little to get you to go on the trip. You know who you are. And I know you're glad you went. And we do hope to go again. And you know, yeah, stay tuned. We're thinking of not having quite as large a group next time, maybe around 16, a 2-van group instead of a 3-van group. I mean, everything went great, but it is a little more unwieldy to have larger group. What?
it was just funny. I'd start walking and be like,
Yeah.
Come on, folks, let's go.
Everybody would start moving. And the first time somebody was like, how do I know when to start going? They were just following everybody else. And I think I was like, because she's over there waving everybody. I was like, oh, okay.
Anyway, it all worked out. We didn't lose anyone anywhere. We didn't leave anybody, you know, in some gas station on the freeway. Anyway.
Oh, that's great intel, Grace. Thank you for. So someone was asking about the cost of the trip. Like, how much do you need to save up to go next time? And Grace was saying it's about $2,000, including things like their dog sitter and the gifts and Dana to the monasteries.
Wow.
And they even have a spreadsheet.
Hey, that's
Grace.
helpful.
That's great.
That's helpful.
It is.
Yeah. I talked about diversity. I wonder if a wheelchair. I think it would be hard with a wheelchair.
Yeah.
We didn't have wheelchair accessible vans.
And even at Ajahn Gunha's, there are steps up to the
Yeah,
PT.
there are lots of steps.
No, in the back you can drive. That's right. In the back you can get, and it goes, the back of his QT is a ramp.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. So
You could
it might be.
you could
okay,
get
but-
to his kuti, and they could put you on a level where you could probably, I mean,
No, that would, yeah.
in terms of the sleeping accommodations, he can
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
find you a place
Yeah,
where
should
that
be
would be
okay.
possible.
The van is a problem.
The
I don't
van's a
know where to
problem.
get a van that is
Yeah.
wheelchair accessible there. That'd be tricky.
Yeah,
Um,
the van in terms of like, if you want to go to visit Ajahn Gunha, you can do it on your own.
mhm.
We can give you the information. There's a woman there who's called Gift. And she will set up the pickup from the airport, whatever airport you come into. You can just give her your flight information, and a van or a taxi from the monastery will come to pick you up and bring you to the monastery. And when you want to leave, she'll arrange for you to leave again. It's drop dead easy, and they'll provide what you need there. I mean, it may not all be as comfortable as you're used to. We do have to prepare the mind to not be, comfort-seeking, demanding Westerners. We did a lot of preparation for the trip. We met with everybody online.
like 3 times.
Like 3 times. There were a lot of questions. People formed a WhatsApp group that really was helpful, people helping each other out. You do have to go with a sense of some austerity. And, it's good to be prepared, but it is possible to go. And one of the reasons we want to take people is so that they know how to go to Thailand again if they want to. They can go spend and Kalen came along with us again also for the second time, and he stayed on. He's at Ajahn Gunha's now still. And he's actually thinking of maybe an early retirement and spending longer period there and just, being a temple boy for a while. Anyway, yeah, I'm really glad and relieved that it worked out as well as it did.
I keep looking at Steve down there. I'm like, Steve, you and Karen coming? Come. You can do it. Elizabeth's 78. You two can do it. Come. We may not go next year. We'll see. Carol's asking about a 2024 trip. We're not entirely sure, but we'll let everybody know once we are.
Yeah, and maybe it would mean going in January of 2025 or something.
Yeah, early
We'll see.
2025.
We'll see. We'll try
The
to keep
weather
you
is
posted.
a problem, but
I don't think so.
We'll see.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, it could be depending on when. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for your attentiveness, but mostly thank you for your dedication to the practice, to the Dhamma. And it's not just like Lungpa Gunha said, it's not just meditation. It's not just mindfulness, which we get a huge dose of here in various forms in the West, but it's really the whole of the path. It's the dedication to awaken, to completely free the mind. And Ajahn Gunha said to us once in 2019 when we were there, if you want to be an arahant, you have to spend time with arahants. And I said, that's why we're here, Lungpa. And then the monks are going, because they're like, you don't say that. But I'm the crazy Westerner. I can get away with it a little bit, But, it's just like, this is true. Then you're in an environment where you recognize that it's possible and you really can soak this up. It's something you catch in a way. Mayra?
Well, thank you again. It's been really fun to keep hearing about the trip, and I'm hoping that we can really take all of that good wisdom and compassion and generosity and dedicate the merit to the Middle East before we end today.
Oh, yeah. Let's chant a blessing very quickly. And this is to everybody suffering everywhere. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you. By the power of all the Buddhas, may you ever be well. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you. By the power of all the Dhamma, may you ever be well. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you. By the power of all the SANGHA, may you ever be well. And next week, I hope we talk about week 2 and the other great teachers that we saw. And one person who wrote to me said, if I had only visited Ajahn Gunha, I wouldn't really know what an arahant was. I would only know what Ajahn Gunha is. And by visiting other great teachers, I can get a sense of what an arahant is. So hopefully we can delve into that next time.
I got to plug Grace for that. That was a very astute
I didn't
and
want
wise
to
observation.
out them.
I'm outing them. Everyone should know how wise and smart and kind and good Grace is.
She did it herself here last week, so I think it's okay.
Yeah,
Oh, yay.
that's-
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for your wisdom.
Yeah.